Good morning, everybody.
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
Just another week here at the Pentecast podcast. Happy Monday. We are honored with the one and the only Brother Reverend Jonathan Prickett.
Look how shy he is. He won't even make eye contact with the camera.
Oh, I'm supposed to look at the camera. I'm watching the man.
No, I'm teasing you, man. Welcome to the
Yes.
podcast, man. And it's an honor to have Brother Jonathan with us. And, we had the choice of having you or Jeremy Spurlock.
Is that even a choice?
Yeah, it was a choice.
Is it a hard choice?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because Brother Jeremy Spurlock, when he knew the rules of the show, he immediately said, let's play it by ear. And what he meant by that is, let me sing, and I'll play a tune by your ears. And so we backed out. We had to back out.
Yeah.
But we obviously were recording this pretty late. You're going to hear this on a Monday morning, of course. But here it is, another episode of the Pentecast podcast. Brother Jonathan Prickett was so gracious to come over, hang out with Ryan and I, share a cup of coffee, and eat some type of dessert that my wife made that looks like something that she found off the bottom of a shoe, but it does taste good.
Tastes better than that.
So Ryan and I obviously have been busy bees.
Yep.
Trying to get the studio done. And I wish it was earlier in the day. We could have showed you, which I think you've seen a picture of it, right?
Pictures of it.
Okay.
It looks like it's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Ryan, what is your first experience with Brother Jonathan?
Oh, my.
Well, this ball-headed guy at youth camp's probably the first thing that comes to mind. But that's kind of like the Word of God. It's been a constant thing for the past 7 years or something.
Yeah.
I think I asked him on the way here how many years you had preached.
I'm thinking I did 6 consecutive youth camps, and then I was off for several years, and then this is the first year coming back.
Hootie would say it's been he's been here too often.
Hootie's.
You know what? I'm glad you brought him up.
Oh, boy.
He's been a thorn in the flesh here at the podcast and also in Jonathan Prickett's life for quite some time. You never really have a chance to vindicate yourself and the things that you've been through. What would you say is the worst memory of youth camp at Broxton since being so inundated every year?
Wow. It would be him.
No doubt.
It would be him. I think the doctors are actually worse than him, especially the lead doctor.
Which is Finkelstein or
Terry Morgan.
Oh, let's just call
him by
call
name.
him out,
Call
folks.
sin, brother.
When he puts on the wig, he forgets who he really is.
He's actually just a terrible human being.
He forgets that he's a Christian.
He does.
He's a mess, man.
Oh, wow.
You know, the youth camp, obviously it's a different atmosphere than camp meeting.
Yes.
And the young people love it. One thing that I'll respect about you have preached many, many Father's Day messages in my life because of how many times you've preached at youth camp.
Yep.
And every time I hear you preach, and I'm going to tell you this, and please don't cry, because then we'll cry. I'll say this to you, and I don't know. He's got his handkerchief for all you listeners out there. I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, and I'm literally not fabricating this whatsoever. One thing that I have greatly respected about you ever since I heard you preach for the very first time, every time you have preached, you've always came with substance. And what I mean by that is you've never preached over my head and you've never stepped on my toes. You've always pierced me at the heart. So there's never been a time that I have heard, hey, Jonathan Prickett's coming to preach, where I got upset or, him again.
Great. Here we go.
You know, and so I do appreciate that. I really do.
Well, I appreciate it.
And one thing that I'm grateful for is COVID that struck your family, your home.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for a minor dose of COVID, you would have never got me to go over there and preach for your church.
I couldn't get anybody else to come. So
before he sent the text, I was going, hey, did you try to call me? I'm on the way.
Hey, our church loved you. They still brag on you. It was great.
Well, if you want to elaborate on that, you can.
Poor people.
They must not have much to listen to.
Yeah, well, obviously not. But you know what? Everything all in good fun, and especially if you can reach people in the meantime, have a good time doing it, right?
Absolutely.
I think we did an episode a few weeks ago. I think now everything's running together the way we're recording this summer. We're trying to get everything in as we possibly can. Ryan and I did an episode, and I think we're going to go back a few episodes and kind of get your perspective on it, if you don't mind. One of those was, where is your joy?
Okay.
The question that I asked Ryan was, if the joy of the Lord is your strength, why are there so many miserable Christians in this world?
Well, without sounding harsh, I don't know how long you can go without joy and remain a Christian. Someone that's truly born again, saved, forgiven,
sin free.
How can you not have joy? So, like I said, I don't believe, you go to churches and you see people that's, look, and I understand situations happen, they're sad, but if that's your standard operating procedure, there's something wrong with that. You can't sustain that lifestyle for very long at all.
Right. Well, the question, and that was a really good podcast we did on Where's Your Joy, and Ty actually sat in, which he's no stranger to the podcast. He sat in and gave his perspective of when happiness turned into joy. Happiness, like Ryan said on that episode, happiness is contingent on your circumstance.
That's right.
Yeah.
As long as I have money in the bank, I'm happy. Yeah. Well, people can be full of the joy of the Lord with no money in their bank account and no hope of getting any money.
And in the middle of the storm, if you have joy, that's really all you need.
Yep, and
that sounds cliche, but it's the truth.
It's the truth. It is.
That's exactly right. And I want to operate in that form that God's bigger than my problem. We sing about it, we preach about it, we testify about it, but eventually we have to live it.
That's right.
Yes.
There has to be some form of application.
Right.
And I said this on the podcast, and I'll reiterate it. I believe that as a Christian, I'm commanded to love my neighbor and live a joyful life just as much as the sinner is commanded and beckoned to repentance.
Absolutely.
As a Christian, I think sometimes we harp on the repentant part of the sinner. We get focused on them when there is general maintenance that needs to be done in a Christian life as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so with that said, going to another episode that we aired was Pipe Down Peter. And so the reason why I have a struggle with seeing miserable people. Jonathan's already sweating. He's like, I know where Ryan was going with this. And I know. The reason why I struggle so bad to see miserable Christians, air quotes, number one, I don't think that anybody's going to buy that gospel.
No way.
Number one and foremost. But number two, what good did God do in your life if you're just miserable?
Right.
If he didn't change anything about your life, why would you even call on him in the first place?
Right.
And so with that perspective, talking about Peter, you go to this place that we've kind of drifted into. As long as I can fit the part,
absolutely,
I'm good.
Yeah.
Well, I think we get caught up as churchgoers in playing a part, as we've said so many times. You walk into the church,
right, and
you go ahead and put your costume on, even if it's mental.
Right.
You put it on. So and so's going to be there. He's going to be looking at me. They're going to be looking at me. What are they thinking about me? I know they know this thing about me. Yeah. This is what they're thinking when they see me. All of that, and you get so caught up in that whirlwind of thought, of emotion, until you're playing a part, and you're not even there serving the idea that you're supposed to be. You're not even there for God. You're there for man.
Right.
Yeah. It's nothing but a formality.
Yes.
And when it gets boring to you,
absolutely,
you get out.
You lose your perspective. Is what you're doing.
If there's, and I think we talked about it on the way over here about the truth and the Word of God being your anchor,
right,
your reference point. You can go back to that. And if I went to church and I served God. If you're serving God with your heart, it'll never be an issue.
That's right.
But if I went to church and my only thought was, when I feel like it, or when I'm getting self-recognition by somebody.
When I'm in a good mood.
When I'm in a good mood, I would never show up because I'm now 30 and I'm grumpy all the time, according to my wife and others who know me. And it's not going to be getting any better. So buckle up, if you know me. But just this, you walk into a church, okay, and you see these people that look miserable.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about. You've been all over the place, right?
Absolutely.
And,
A lot of places.
huh?
Been a lot of places. I've seen that a lot of times.
Yeah. Hard flex on his ministry.
No,
No,
not that at all.
Oh yeah, I've been a lot of places. But you see these people, and you can sniff them out
Right.
immediately when you walk through the door. I'm like, they've been in church way too long
Yes.
without an experience.
Yes.
You know, they've been going through the motions so much. I heard something, and this might go in lines with Peter, and I hope by the time this story's over that you guys will add to this, because I feel like I'm rambling, and I'm going to edit all this
Imagine
out.
that.
Huh? I know,
Imagine
right?
that.
This pastor got an invitation to go to this church, and he got there and he realized it's kind of strict. It wasn't a holiness church. I don't believe it was, but it was really strict. And the pastor was kind of telling him about certain people in his church. And he said, well, who's this? You know, he said, that's so-and-so. They do this. She's the piano player, blah, blah, blah. Well, he sees this guy sitting on the front pew, and he looks like a preacher. Anyways, so the evangelist goes, well, who's this gentleman here? The pastor looks at him. I don't know if I told you this story or not, Ryan. The pastor looks at him, and he goes, well, brother, he used to preach in our church, but he had a moral failure, is what he told him. And I don't know how often you have moral failures. I have them
Too often.
more frequently than I would like,
Yeah.
right? And so he said, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, he used to preach in this church for me. He said, but he had a moral failure. And he said, now all he does is sit on the front pew. And he said, why? He said, because I won't use him. And so it really pricked the evangelist's heart. And this is what he said. He goes, Pastor, can I tell you something about this guy here? He said, go ahead. He said, you know the difference between him and the rest of your congregation? He said, what is it?
He said about his.
They haven't got caught yet.
Yes.
And so I think that me and Ryan on this podcast, we've done our very best to try to show young people that we can be transparent.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that I mentioned about your preaching is that you're a transparent
Yes.
guy. But don't you see the way, if we're not careful, we'll project to young people, we'll project to other people that you have to live a absolutely perfect jot and tittle life. There's such a fine line there, because, nerd alert, you have these people on the left-hand side going, don't you do it, don't you go there,
Yeah.
because the second you go over there, you're giving them a pass to sin.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing.
Not at
way.
all.
And then you have people on the other side that are going, yeah, come on, come this way,
Yeah.
because I don't want to do better. I
Yes.
don't want to be saved. I want to live my worldly life,
Right.
and I want to still be accepted and sing and do everything that I'm supposed to do. So there's this middle line that if we're not careful, we'll veer to one way or the other,
Absolutely.
and we'll lose our influence.
Absolutely. You know, I was talking to someone earlier. They said for so long we've preached, and we believe when you're saved, you come out of a life of perpetual sin. But among us, often we've preached that so hard that we're sinless, and yet there's things over here that people do that are clearly, biblically a sin, but nobody sees it. So we either got to rename those things. We rename them mistakes. We rename them stumbled. We rename them failed. They're sin, but we can't call
Flawed.
them sin because we've preached for so long that Christians cannot sin or don't have the capacity to sin.
Isn't that like the far right version of Calvinism? If you think about it. Well, we don't believe in Calvinism, and I know I'm getting in trouble, so let me get in trouble. We don't believe in Calvinism. We don't believe in once saved, always saved.
Right.
Okay? But we do to a certain extent, because just change the wording,
Yes.
and we can be saved always.
Yes.
I didn't sin, I struggled.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we can say, and I'm not throwing everybody under a blanket.
Right.
There's good people everywhere. There's terrible people everywhere.
Yeah.
There's wheat. There's tares. We're all in between.
Absolutely.
Some people have depicted me as a terror, and sometimes they were right. And so you see these people that get stuck on this one place.
Yes.
Struggle, sin, not sin. But we don't believe in once saved, always saved.
Right.
Well, at what point is it appropriate to say, you're sinning and you need to get saved?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you got to look, 1 John 1, 1 John 3, you have an act of sin, and then you also have a state of sin. Like I mentioned tonight, how do we define sin? If we define sin only as the big things that people see, adultery, or
smoking a cigarette on the porch,
lost his temper and he cussed somebody out, I get
has a beer in his hand,
but
stuff like that.
What if we get down to jealousy or gossip,
heart issues,
are those sin or are they not sin?
Which are causing just as much of a problem in your church as adultery would, as anything else.
Absolutely.
And really, to be honest with you, you're trying to win souls.
Right.
Your opportunity as a shepherd, which you're a pastor,
yes.
But your opportunity that you have on a Sunday morning, Sunday night, prayer meeting night, I'm trying to make sure my flock, my congregation makes it. And the only way we're going to do that is if I'm transparent with them,
right,
and they're honest with me.
Yeah.
You got to let me know where you're at.
Scripturally, making a mistake and a failure, those aren't capital offenses. Romans 3 said it didn't say the wages of a mistake are death, the wages of a failure. It said the wages of sin.
Right.
So that's what you want to let people know. Hey, we don't believe in a sinning religion. We don't believe you can sin. You just do whatever you want to. But at the same time, the idea that you can reach a place where you're exempt from ever, and
from
again,
ever even being tempted.
And it's so hard for me to even say it now because we've been so, geared in that direction. But we want to change the words. It's a mistake. It's not. It's a sin. That doesn't mean we throw in the towel and quit. We've not reached a place where we're exempt from that.
Mm-hmm. And really what boils down to it is, where's your heart? Are you even trying?
Yes.
Are you even trying to live right?
Right.
Brother Daniel Dean, the Sunday morning of youth camp, I don't know, you weren't there.
No, sir.
Man, Ryan, when he mentioned that about a trial and a temptation,
yeah.
I've never looked at that the way he preached. He said a trial is something you can't help. He said temptation is because you want it. A trial you don't want.
Right.
Yeah.
He said temptation, he says you're drawn away and tempted or enticed and
because
tempted.
That's really your desire.
By your own lust. And so I have used it, and so I'll throw myself under the bus. I've used it a bunch of times, like, the devil's tempted me, me, blah, blah. I'm really tempted of my own wants. My heart's not in the right place.
Right.
That's why I'm being tempted in the first place. And a trial is not that way. If you pull up to my yard and I got a 6-pack of beer out there smoking a cigarette and a wife beater, and I'm sitting out there and I'm like, pray for me, brother. I'm just struggling. Or pray for me, man. I'm just in a trial. No, you're not.
Right.
You have to come to grips, honesty. Where am I at? I'm in a bad place.
Yeah. I mean, there have been times, and we talk about it all the time, there's been times in my life that everything was terrible. I mean, trials of life the heat was turned up. But spiritually, I was A-okay.
Yes.
Because my heart was right.
That's right.
And then there's been times when really the storm wasn't really brewing, but I was tempted.
Yes.
And those are the times that will sink you.
Right.
If you're not careful.
If you're not careful.
So how do you become transparent enough to let people know, hey, you know what, I've struggled, I've had my problems, but still keep that amount of leverage that you need to pastor them, to help them, and to let them know that you're not giving them an out.
Right.
Yeah. Showing someone that you're human isn't permission to sin.
No.
It's just to say, hey,
I needed him just as bad as you.
I'm trying to go to heaven just like you are.
I heard a preacher one time, he was preaching along temptation lines, and he made the statement, he said, I almost backslid because of what people wouldn't tell me. He said, they didn't tell me that we had struggles, and they were battling temptations. They just put on their church clothes and acted like everything was okay.
Yeah.
When in reality, they were having the same struggles everybody else was having. They just wouldn't talk about it.
Exactly.
Because they were scared it was going to mar them. But
Scared of what
I mean,
man would think.
if we're in this together, I need to know, hey, somebody's been where you are, or you may need to know, hey, I've dealt with what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this on my mind for some time. I want to be real. I'm not interested in old folks say putting on airs. I just want to be real.
And if you like it, great. If you don't, it's okay. We're still friends, and I want to go to heaven.
I just want to be real, and I want to be real with our people. Not that, I'm up here and you're down here.
Mm-hmm. Keep climbing.
It's that, hey, we're in this together, and I've struggled.
Well, and on that note, there's someone that we know very well. I haven't told you about this.
You're keeping things from me,
I
Ryan?
am.
Wow, this is
up until this point.
Wow, this is new on the podcast. He's keeping things from me.
I've had him on my mind pretty heavily lately. He was backslid for years and years. He got saved, real deal, saved, and then his home dynamic is troublesome, and it needs God to work it out. I mean, period. How many of us are in that same boat? All of us, because we're all human.
Yes.
Pray for my wife.
But
she needs friends.
Yes, she does.
He was doing super great, coming to church, reading his Bible. I'd go to his house. He'd have Bibles and study books laid out. Now, he doesn't even come to church.
Wow.
I haven't called him, but I guarantee you there was one little something that happened that came up, and he failed. He sinned, and he let that stop God's work.
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
It is.
That's
ridiculous.
not bashing him. We, by being transparent, are trying to prevent that.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been preaching a lot lately. I preached at our church, and if we're not careful, we can give off. We've tried to push so far away from the doctrine of eternal security, and rightly so.
Yeah.
And once in grace, always in grace, that sometimes people present like the Lamb's Book of Life is on a dry erase board.
Exactly.
And I
picture mine just terribly looking.
You've got this one angel that's designated just for you.
Again.
He's got Expo, and there's Andrew again. Erase it, write it back. That's not grace. That's not grace. Grace isn't a license to sin, but grace is not the Lamb's Book of Life on a dry erase board. And every time I said tonight, if you're sinning and it doesn't bother you, you probably need salvation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But if you're saved, look, John said, I write that you sin not, but if you have an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
As a Christian, when we commit sin, and boy, that's hard to say, especially knowing you guys are going to air this.
It really is, because it's not
sins,
an admission of sinning.
Yes.
It's an admission of
it's an
humanity.
act, yes, and to know that when you do that, you can go back to God, and it will convict you, and you don't want to offend against God, and we go and we pray and ask for forgiveness. That's altogether different than the idea of I can just live any way I want to
and still go to heaven.
Have you ever done something that you really were unaware of and confronted about it? Hey, you did this. For instance, has anybody ever he knows
Why don't you
about
tell
that.
us one of your experiences?
Well, I'm just saying.
Well, I was hurt one time. Too many. No, I don't have one off the top of my head, but let's use an example here. I want to speak in parables because I'm Christ-like. Okay. Brother Jonathan, you said something that hurt my feelings. Have you ever had that happen? Wow, he is perfect. Here he is telling us that we don't have to be.
I know I've said stuff to hurt people's feelings, but they probably just don't tell me.
Have you ever known of somebody, you hurt my feelings and you said something that hurt me or whatever?
You wasn't aware of it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If I did,
or
I am
somebody
sorry.
took something out of context, took it not the way you meant it.
Okay. Well, take that into perspective of what the Holy Ghost does for you. When you snap at somebody, immediately that quicken.
Yes.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
That's right.
That's your opportunity to ask for forgiveness to
That's
that person.
And that's what I was thinking when you were talking earlier. How many times do we get into a situation and you step back from it and you say, man, I didn't handle that the way I wanted to.
Yes.
Come on.
That's your opportunity.
That's
Right.
it.
And not, but then the next time, well, they deserved it.
Yeah.
Then next thing you know, you're a bitter soul. You know, you're
Yep.
sitting around
Yep.
hating each other, biting
Yes.
your fingernails and each other. And so the main thing to be is honest, transparent, and people respect that.
Yeah.
Authentic.
Authenticity. That's the word you're looking for?
Yeah, it's tough.
We've got a podcast name that
geez.
somewhere.
Yeah, we do. Authenticity. We actually did an episode on that. And if you go to our website at www.pentecastpodcast.com,
Hint, hint.
we actually, if you scroll down to the bottom of the website, we actually, our mission statement or whatever it is, Ryan, is we want to give you a casual approach of an authentic Christian
Yes.
life. Because if I can put myself out there and let people know, hey, he's not perfect,
Right.
and if they can feel that
You're not perfect.
unfortunately I'm not,
Okay.
and
Be careful how you say that.
and to all of his church members, this is new to him. I know he let me preach over there the other day, but
They didn't
this
have
is
any
new.
other options.
Yes, exactly. It was
Everybody had COVID.
It was Christmas, and things went out of whack, and at least I didn't have to go eat with Nathan weeks.
Yeah.
But I had a good time over there. I think people respect authenticity.
Yes.
I really do. I think people respect it because they desire it.
Yeah.
They desire the truth deep down. And in so many examples in the Bible, they didn't want to be lied to anymore. Just
Right.
tell me the truth.
Absolutely.
You know?
And goes back to how we started this. Every one of us, to a degree, are going through motions
Yeah.
in some respect. When someone stands up and says, we're going through the motions, you're like, light bulb,
Yeah.
come on. He's doing it too.
Yeah.
We're all in the same
Right.
boat.
No, so it speaks a lot. I've got preachers that I look up to that can preach truth,
Humanity.
and they do it though in a way that they're wanting to pull me,
Absolutely.
help me. You don't have to be hard.
Yeah.
You don't have to be mean.
And just
You know,
because
we're
you're
trying to
not
help
hard,
people.
just because you're not hard doesn't mean that you're soft on sin.
Right? Absolutely.
No, it just means you're soft on that man's heart.
Yes,
And you
exactly.
want him to go to heaven.
That's exactly right. Man, I've enjoyed this episode,
Me
haven't
too.
you?
It's been fun.
Yes.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. We got a lot of respect for you. And in honor of the man that bailed on me,
You gonna play one?
How nauseating.
terrible.
Mm.
Oh, his daughter's, she's
Yeah.
got a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
He'd be ruined without her.
I'm telling you.
He wouldn't have a
That
ministry.
boy, too.
You know what he's going to want me to do? And this is going to be post youth camp. He's going to want me to back him. He's going to want me to back him.
Well,
Can we address the issue if he don't get to preach every night?
Yes, please
And
do
I have
that.
to preach 6 times and he only preaches like once. I mean, how does that?
Well, we need to get the offering straight.
That's what I kind of was thinking.
And
needs to be prorated.
it really does. And, I think it's not fair,
He
in my
basically
opinion.
gets paid to do nothing.
He really does. He's a great guy who is conflicted on his wants and desires when it comes to podcasting.
Okay.
And he's a good man, I hope. But, man, I've enjoyed this episode. I really have. I really
too.
appreciate you
It's
coming
been
on, man.
fun. I appreciate you guys
Yeah,
having me
absolutely, man. Well, it's been another episode of the Pentecast podcast. And like always, we appreciate you.
Absolutely. Have a great week. We love you. Over and under.